What's up, YouTube? We are back with the Troponin episodes, episode 24. Friendly reminder, you can like, subscribe, drop us a comment, turn on notifications, and always find more of this content available at teamtroponin.com. I'm going to make a pitch for First Attachment Nutrition as well. I believe you can also use the code TROPE10
Correct.
on First Attachment for that'll save you on ebooks, as well as the supplements and clothing. So a lot of the information that Justin's putting out is available on ebook format as well. So
I believe Lamartina 10 is also active, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For anyone listening, go ahead and use Lamartina 10. Then
I was going to say just use Trope 10. I don't think anybody else really.
Those two get a little extra, get a little benefit from it. Trope 10.
Here you go. If you're in Michigan, use Trope 10. If you're in Texas, use Lamartina 10.
Or anywhere else.
But if you're anywhere else, you should be in Texas anyway.
So we're actually going to kick off tonight's conversation with a question that someone dropped on our last episode regarding the healthiest way to reverse if they're not out of a post-contest period, if they're not necessarily looking to really milk the rebound for size, but just looking at overall health. So we're going to hear Justin's thoughts on that.
I kind of don't. It's a good question, but it's a tough one because what we do isn't about health. There's some. Yeah. There's some like side benefits. You eat generally healthy food. You do a lot of cardio, at least when you're in prep. And health is a loaded word because are you considering health like whether you can be athletic and live like an exciting life and do a lot of things, or do you consider health at longevity? You want to live a long time. Because the truth is, if you want to live a long time, the healthiest way to rebound out of a diet is to stay on the diet and probably even take calories lower. Because really, that's really the best way we can reduce aging without the use of supplementation or medicines is to lower calorie intake. If you're talking about health, as far
from like we're talking like peak contest stage, like they just got off stage, they did the whole diet.
Mm-hmm. That's why health is tough because they have rats living to like the equivalent of 200 human years by doing really nothing more than keeping them as close to starving to death without actually starving to death as possible, and then that's like extends their lifespan to what would essentially be almost double or 200. Yeah, so that's the thing is what is health? If health is you want normal like healthy blood work, then it probably there's just too much going on because we're not robots. The way to do that if you want healthy blood work would be a slow transition out of the diet, slowly bringing up calories, slowly removing stimulants, probably more quickly removing stimulants and slowly removing the cardio. But that, there's more involved with that because you're taking someone who's just dieted for 4 months and they've had, food fixation for 4 months. Their hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, are out of control. Every like stretch receptor in their stomach has been so like adjusted and changed in what it thinks normal is, and every single signal there possibly is in the body is telling you to eat. It's like our signals are just pain signals. Hunger is just like another pain signal. Like you break your bone, it's a very strong signal because of pain, because you have before modern medicine, if you had a broken bone, if you didn't stay off that broken bone, you didn't survive. You broke it worse and you get an infection and you die. So it's a very, very strong pain stimulus telling you that, hey, the only way we survive is to put no pressure on this bone right now. Well, hunger is a similar thing. When you're really, really hungry, it's a strong pain. It's a different type of pain, but it's a strong pain sensation. And so you have that, and that doesn't go away. If anything, it accelerates when you start introducing food again. Because you can imagine, you have to think like evolutionary terms or basically caveman terms, because we haven't had the chance to evolve from cavemen in the time frame. We've invented a lot of things, but our physiology is pretty much the same as it was when guys were hunting woolly mammoths. And so if you were in a diet in the wild like that, it meant there were no woolly mammoths. And so you'd be really hungry, but your body would start trying, it would reach a hunger level, and then and everyone knows who's been in prep knows you kind of like, it's bad. And then it kind of hits this weird level where you just kind of like accept your fate. But that's like, because your body's doing things. It says, okay, I need to survive this famine. 1, I don't want to move. 2, there's a certain level. Obviously, I know I'm hungry. So sending more hunger signals doesn't improve my chance. I know I'm hungry. If there's food, I'm going to eat it. Well, as soon as you get some food back in the body, your body goes, whoa, oh, woolly mammoths are back. Let's hunt, let's eat. And so everyone knows the hunger after the diet is worse than at the very end of the diet. That as soon as you start bringing food back in. And so the healthiest way really is to slowly titrate food up if you were a robot. Now, a human's going to have a very, very difficult time with that, because as soon as they start eating food, the signal to eat more is going to be way higher than it was in prep. And if your goal is health and you try to do that, it's very likely going to lead to unplanned binges, which is completely not healthy. So it's a really tough decision, which is why I'm pretty animate with my post-contest approach, which is a calorie burst for, up to a week immediately after the show, sticking to clean food as much as possible with some cheats thrown in to allow you to, to stick to the diet the times when we need to, knowing that there's that freedom maybe at the end of the day or whatever, and then that's just what I found to be the quickest way for most people to get back on a structured eating plan where we can control the calories and control the macros. It just so happens that really it's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing. It just so happens that approach also happens to be the best way to add size very quickly, provided you stay on anabolics. So it's just a loaded question because there's not one answer, because a robot, the healthiest way would be to continue starving. The next healthiest way would be to slowly increase calories, but a human is very likely to have unplanned binges in that case.
No, go ahead.
I think a lot of times when people talk about health post-contest, their first thought is drugs, and that's probably shouldn't be the case, because how much you eat has such a big influence on, your weight fluctuation, even the amount of water you can hold, which can be really unhealthy. But if you are concerned about, staying on anabolics post-contest or not going to a cruise immediately, that's technically not the healthiest way to do it if you're only looking at that short period of time. But if you want to progress as a bodybuilder and you're looking at your entire year, then you have to ask yourself, like, when can I really maximize size gains, and how can I be how can I keep my health at the highest kind of area under the curve over the course of the year? And I think your approach does that better than most, because you can make probably the best gains of the year on less gear post-contest, and then go on your cruise and then be set up for a good off season where you can still start lean, versus another approach where maybe you immediately go for the healthier approach, but that's just going to make the rest of your off season potentially harder and less productive.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, because with my approach, you're basically for the 4 to 8 weeks post-contest, you're still on stuff, which is technically unhealthy, but you're only using about 60% of your peak off-season doses from the previous off-season. So that is healthy. And then when you hit your cruise and then hit your real off-season, at that point, you're already possibly past your previous peak off-season size from the year before. And if you take that, the other approach would be that you start that off-season, however long after contest, very much down in size, and now you have to catch up to that. You're going to push things harder. And I think it's bore out in that, I've worked with a lot of people for a lot of years, and it might be luck, it might be who knows, but I've really been lucky in that I've had no major health issues with any of my clients in 20 years, and that's working with. I've agreed to work with former high-level powerlifters and bodybuilders who have serious heart issues or serious health issues like heart failure, type 2 diabetes, various levels of renal disease, who insist that they're still going to continue on, and they would like a coach that helps them, be able to do that without further damaging their health. But if they don't find one, they're just going to keep doing what they were doing, because the sport is what it is and people get addicted to it. But yeah, I think that's a very good point.
One thing that I was thinking about, it might have been last week when we were recording actually, was just the value of your clinical background from when you were working in the hospitals and things like that. And I think there's a big shift and a big trend right now for RDs to be coaching in prep, and they kind of really continue to emphasize again, like the healthy. You see them doing a very slow reverse, and it almost creates this kind of dichotomy in the post-show phase of, do you take more of the kind of the rebound approach like you do, or do you take the more like disciplined slow reverse? And I think right now it's very en vogue to say you don't have to be up X amount of pounds from stage weight. It's like, no, you don't. But what's the cost of that too?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
At some point you need to be up because if you're going to grow, so either you can do it when your growth ability is optimized, where you can be up and you can gain that weight on much lower doses than you will be able to any other time of the year, or you can wait and make that happen when you can't do that, when you have to take the doses to the full amount. Either way, you're arguably on anabolics the same amount of time, you're cruising the same amount of time. So, if you look at things like David said, like circumferentially or comprehensively, you see that like area under the curve. If you were to take the total milligrams you take over the course of the year and how much size you're able to make, I think it's very likely and very probable that the rebound approach, pushing calories, pushing good food immediately after the contest and getting a jump on everything. I shouldn't say probably. I can guarantee that approach will lead to the same yearly progress with a less total milligrams used of anabolics for the year.
Yeah. Is it fair to say this might be a little bit of a different consideration depending on how big you already are? Because I asked that because, to be clear, I'm like very glad that we took the rebound approach we have every off season, but this current off season is the one where it's like I'm nearing 300 pounds and like the rebound got me almost there. And so it was like, okay, this is a lot of added size. That's awesome. But I'm also holding a good bit of water, and it was a lot of weight to take on all at once. And, I wouldn't change it, but I'm just wondering if you might lean towards a different approach for someone with like, maybe you'll just hear more clients who are big saying, man, I'm struggling to add this extra weight versus somebody who competed at 160 and now they're 190 and they're still under 200 pounds.
That's actually another really good point, that you're probably at our last year where we can really push the rebound. Like someone like a Luke Wood, we didn't do that, Luke Sando, sorry. I was thinking Luke Wood because Milos used to do that with him. But Luke Sando, after a show, we just couldn't do it. He would have been, like 320 pounds, a month later. And the water retention and the fluid volume and the issues related to it. I mean, we would still, push a little bit, but it wouldn't be like a real aggressive rebound. So that is a good point. It's hard, and it shows itself. It was obvious with you. We pushed the rebound, and then we've had to like pull back a little bit compared to what we would have been able to do previous years because of the size and the water retention. So that's a good point. But I think that's an argument it's almost not necessary to make, because you're talking 1% of people who are serious about bodybuilding. Even it's a very small population that has to worry about that.
It is wild actually being around someone. My family is small. My mom is like maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. My dad's like 120 pounds. Like my brother's like 130 pounds, and I'm out here like, what's up, guys? And it is remarkable being around someone who's actually 300 pounds. Like it is mind blowing to think about how much mass you're actually carrying, the physiological stress that goes into sustaining that day to day. And that's kind of where I was wondering how much you feel like your clinical background and working in the hospital and kind of having that ex-phys background has come into play with your coaching.
Probably quite a bit, because the problems that we'd see, because I did echocardiograms, stress tests, and then cardiac rehab, which is really all the things, heart function, general blood work, and then in cardiac function. And then of course they're all linked to renal issues and stuff. So I think you for 10 years of my life, that's all I did from a clinical setting with 300-pound people. It was a different type of 300 pounds, but like the cardiovascular system is the same for everyone. Yeah. And in some ways it's worse for the muscle, because the muscle requires the blood flow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I still don't. The sizes come on fast enough that I haven't like gotten used to it. I joke that like if you ever played video games, your character has like a hitbox that determines like when you bump into stuff or get hit with a bullet or whatever. I'm not used to my hitbox yet, so I'm just going.
He walks into our kitchen and I'm like, oh god, dude.
What you mean waddles in?
Yeah, well, I mean he's got a little. Yeah, it's the big man waddle.
My thighs
looks like he's got like sitting in a saddle while he walks.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Actually, I've got a clip of that from Walmart walking behind him. Pretty comical. Yeah. So one of the things that Justin and I were talking about just a little bit on Instagram, I'm going to see if I can pull up a conversation. Just the difference between, abdominal training and when to, like, how beneficial is it? I'm going to pull up our conversation so I can remember the context. But I think you had basically said that
I think there's that's
Exactly.
another thing, like the health. There's different things to argue. I think there's this weird thing that like weighted ab training will make you blocky. But if you look, I mean, the young guys don't really have that. There's a whole like area of Instagram with like the aesthetic guys who really do. They train with heavyweight with their abs, and their abs are astounding, amazing. If everyone remembers Ahmad Agaz, no, who was it? The Abzilla from the early to mid 2000s. He was just a pro bodybuilder, really undersized, but he had incredible abs and they were very thick, and he had a small waist. You know, like if you build your rectus abdominis, you're not going to get a blocky waist. Now, can you do that without, you know, building? But even if you build your obliques, because your obliques are above your waist, really, and it comes down. Because if you've ever like seen those guys who do the Adonis belt stuff, you know, like that's like the V or whatever. There's like a whole like subculture of that too, where guys have like look like pythons going down to their C-rotch, you know, and it's like they don't look blocky. They look like they got insane abs, you know. It looks a little weird, like it's a little overdeveloped. But I think you said before in another episode, maybe when we were talking, that blocky waist, oh yeah, it was from deadlifts. It was really from the erector thickness. It's really not linked to the abs. Now there's more involved because there's not just the rectus abdominis, there's the transverse abdominis, there's the obliques, and I think you can make an argument with things like that.
And that's kind of where I was really wanting to go with some of this too, is like people think about ab training, you think about training for aesthetics versus training for function. So when we think about a stage athlete, obviously you're going to see rectus abdominis and you want to be able to hold a good vacuum. And what's interesting is those are two very different types of things. Obviously the rectus training you just hit on, we're like, yes, you probably would, most of us, I think, would probably benefit from actually having a well-developed abdominal wall. Now on the rehab side of that, I'm going to give a caveat and say that too many people overuse their upper rectus thinking it's the transverse abs, and it throws a whole wrench in the system in terms of pressure, bracing, shoulder health. I mean, overactive rectus is like, it's a problem. But the transverse abdominis is one that we usually train via function. And so it's interesting because on stage, we want both of those things, but we train them different ways. Actually, I have a whole article about this on the site too, on training for function versus training for aesthetics. And it's interesting to think about because you look at people who are saying like, oh yeah, I do my core training. I do my like, you know, hanging leg raises to, you know, for back health. And I'm like, if you're going to do that for back health with a deadlift, I don't think you're really doing what you think you're doing.
Thank you. That's been like a pet peeve of mine for a long time. And I'm not like, I mean, I'm an exercise physiologist by degree, but I don't consider that stuff to really be my expertise. So I never get into the thick of it on arguments, but that's been a pet peeve of mine.
Mm-hmm. I think people can really stand to benefit from, and I talked about this last week, but there are so many free apps that you can do this with too, where if you pull up an anatomy app and you pull up their, you know, like little person, you can put on layers of muscles or whatever, and actually stop and like appreciate for a moment where everything actually attaches and runs in the lines of holes, not only from like the perspective of ab training for, again, like aesthetic versus function, but just training in general, and really appreciating the three-dimensional nature that things are not as linear as we think they are. And most of us have some sort of preconceived notion about where we think a muscle attaches and what we think it does. But very often, especially if you're someone who has some sort of like a weird motor pattern, or you can't feel a muscle work while you're training, or you have an injury somewhere, there's probably a portion of that muscle that attaches or runs differently than what you were thinking. That is maybe a good starting point. I see this a ton. I was talking to someone yesterday looking at upper trapeus, and people forget that traps actually, they have a whole anterior portion that attaches like on your collarbone. We think about traps back here.
Yeah.
And so it's always interesting to me, you know, especially kind of coming back to the ab thing, really looking at where things run, and appreciating that you need to control both sides of where the attachments are to actually train the muscle. And it's very different. Something like a weighted sit-up or decline crunch, like Meadows used to have people do 4 sets of either upper or lower abs on training days, versus something for stability, like an offloaded carry, or, you know, whatever people want to do these days. So that was just kind of a tangent that we got into that I think is really interesting with regards to waist size too.
Yeah, definitely. That's like that's the general thing with this sport, and just with bodybuilding or the physique sports, is that it's kind of like weight when people use the scale to decide whether they're losing fat, you know. And it's like there's many distinct differences between training for appearance and training for performance, you know. And people just they lump the two together like they're the same thing, you know, because because you weight train to improve your performance.
Yeah.
And you also weight train to increase your muscle size. And in many ways, increased muscle size will increase performance, but they're not a one-to-one correlation by any means.
Just thinking about the physiology, not only the energy systems, but the neuromuscular control. There are different points where you're going to want synchronicity of motor units versus times you're going to want more fine-tuned control. And I think that's something that people kind of forget as well. Not only, again, with training, but just, yeah, not only with like bodybuilding training, but if we're going to come back to like the health and like athleticism standpoint, there are so many different types of use that if we want to look and think about just like, okay, what would the healthiest person, what would they look like? They probably have an appreciable amount of muscle mass. They probably have pretty good functional range of motion. Their blood work would look really good. And so what all goes into making that happen? And it's such a combination of so many different data points forming one constellation together that it's so hard to isolate. And people really fixate on one, thinking that's the thing.
Yep.
Okay, let's say I don't care about any of that hippie shit. I just want to get bigger. And I don't really like ab training. I am describing myself right now.
Yeah, I know.
I do care about health, but yeah, I don't really care about functionality, so to speak. I just want to get bigger. Like, to what degree do I need ab training and what kind to basically keep myself, reasonably orthopedically healthy and stable under load? And keep in mind, I'm not like barbell squatting. I am pulling heavy, but I'm not conventional deadlifting. I just want to be able to brace well enough on the exercises that I'm doing.
I think a good answer to that might be if you start to feel an overuse somewhere, and usually people are going to feel their low back first, or they're going to get that like nasty back pump, like you get off a hack squat and for some reason you have a back pump. That's a problem. That shouldn't be happening. So I think using training as your indicator of knowing when you need to put things in is going to be important. Now, do I think people should probably be doing something year round? Yeah. I think it's just like anything else, to where if you want to bring the best possible version of yourself to any situation, whether it's training, the stage, or powerlifting meet, or strongman competition, or whatever, you probably need to have the discipline to do all the small things all the time. But like Justin says, like we're not robots.
Yeah.
But I do think that training and actually having the ability to step back and kind of choose your indicators is going to be big. We talked about this with you actually, where for you, that if you stop being able to feel certain parts of your left foot, you're going to get your knee pain back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone that trains should probably start to develop some KPIs or key performance indicators that just tell them that it's almost like the check engine light comes on.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's got something different. Justin, I'm sure you've got some.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. But but that thing, I think, just the how you understand your body and how you learn your body. I think it's a totally side topic, and I don't want to get on it. But I remember
it's a good one though.
But, like I remember like learning about nutrition and finally realizing like when I had energy and when I did things you never even knew were a thing. Like where you really understand your body. When you're glycogen depleted. And things we just take for granted after being in the sport forever. But most people walking around don't understand or don't have any real framework for understanding those things. They don't know if you weren't an athlete growing up, you don't know like when there's joint issues or where something's kind of out of place or where there's like your gait is off or you're like there's like a small injury or a spine thing that you don't and then with the energy levels and the diet, and have no ability to correlate their energy levels, mood, sleep levels or whatever with what their diet is. And I remember being young and finally and kind of learning that about my body when I got into nutrition. It was really like weird, like knowing that I knew, especially when I started competing and in prep, because it's heightened and exactly where your glycogen stores and energy levels are. And I remember like being so mesmerized by like eating carbs and then knowing that, like feeling it in the 2 hours.
Feeling like you like fall out a little bit.
Yeah. And feeling like thinking you're going to eat carbs and there's going to be a ton of energy right away. And it's like, well, that didn't happen. I'm almost a little sleepy. But then later on, and then especially the next day, you're like, wow, it's like, I know it's there now. And just like being like really intrigued by how it all worked and like thinking how, I went 20 years or whatever my life, never understanding that all that was going on in my body and it was affecting my life, but I just didn't understand it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's wild to me just having the PT background, and like my undergrad is also in XPhys, and I thought about going to get a PhD in XPhys just because I love the science of all this stuff. I'm a big nerd. But it's wild to me as a PT, having the background of like the neuromuscular stuff, the orthopedic stuff, the cardiopulmonary stuff, like all the systemic, like we're taught, people don't realize this. You go to PT school and you think you're going to like come out of like a sports PT or ortho PT, or like you just get a magic cat and you walk out the door and you do the thing. But really, we're taught to be general practitioners. So we're taught to look at all these different systems. One of my clinical rotations was actually working with cystic fibrosis patients, which is
cool.
very, very different from what people, obviously different from what I do now. But it's absolutely wild knowing this much and then looking at the internet and where people are consuming information from. And like, I'm out here like, oh my God, like my clients are out here consuming some of this, and I feel like I need to almost like protect them in a way. But it's hard when you realize how deep that hole is, and you just start to look over the edge of it, and there are other people just like, you know, yelling opinions that aren't necessarily accurate on that topic. Can I dovetail this for a second?
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the tendon tears.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So one thing that I tore my adductor tendon a couple years ago, squatting, and getting back onto the bar was a long, kind of arduous process. And at the time, there weren't many people who would have that same injury. And so there wasn't a surgeon who could reattach it for me. And it was kind of like, good luck.
To clarify, this isn't like popping a few adductor fibers in the muscle belly. This is adductor tendon snaps off the pelvis.
I was literally swollen from like my rib cage halfway down my thigh. It like looks like half of me was pregnant down into my thigh. It was not comfortable. And now there are quite a few people who've had a similar injury. And off the bat, and I have their permission to talk about it, but Andrew Herbert tore his adductor tendon. He was able to have his attached. Our friend Ranson had a tear very similar to mine, but was not able to have it reattached. And then another friend of mine just torn his, and he's out like squatting 2 days later. It took me like 6 months to get back under a bar, if not longer, and that was pushing it. And so I think a lot of times there's a tendency for people to kind of compare their injuries to what someone else around them has had going on and compare experiences. And really what you're basing that on is you're basing that on your feel, and you're basing that on an imaging result. And most often that imaging result or that read is so inaccurate that you can't necessarily call your injury the same as someone else's. A lot of what I do is talking people kind of off a ledge of being like, you're okay. You don't need to, you know, come back just like this person did. But it was just an interesting point that it's so important not to rely on a physician read for the results of an injury. I think it's an important data point, but they're getting one snapshot in time. I mean, you move literally just a tiny bit the other direction, and it's going to expose tissue totally differently. And so what was interesting about these adductor injuries is that consistently we had very similar reads, but you look at the videos of the injuries occurring and they are not at all alike, except for Ranson and I were like identical.
Well, it seems really counterproductive to assign or to just over-focus on the label or the read.
Yeah.
As you say, because you can call it the same thing. I mean, you could have 10 different reads and they all say adductor tear, but like if you're used to working on, just take this outside the human body, anything like mechanical, like, I don't know, you do any woodworking, you work on cars, whatever. If something's broken, you could describe the way it's broken in the same way over 10 different scenarios. A couple of them might be an easier repair still, while a bunch of them could be an arduous repair. It just depends on exactly how things are broken. I mean, our body's like, it's more than a mechanical system, but a lot of it is like kind of a mechanical system of moving parts. And so just if two people say, I had an adductor tear, it's like you really got to understand like what happened to the tendon, where is it now, and, you know, what condition was it before it tore? Well,
not even that. Like the physician reading it basically is they're getting one snapshot. That if your leg was positioned slightly differently, they get a totally different picture.
I think that's, I mean, I hate to use math, but that's like, it really explains it. Math really explains everything. But like, because there's linear equations and there's nonlinear equations or nonlinear systems. And linear systems are great because it's like a ball rolling down a hill. You know the angle of the hill, and you know the force of gravity and the force of friction, and you can predict in all future times where that ball is going to be because nothing changes. But our human bodies are not linear. Nonlinear system is like self-energizing, meaning when one thing change, that change affects the other things, which then affect the original change again. And then in those systems, the further away you get from any data point, the less ability do you have to know anything about the system. So like you injure that adductor, you have that MRI and you can say quite a bit about it. You can't say everything, but you can say quite a bit about it at that moment. But you cannot predict the healing and you cannot predict the recovery, because each moment after that, the way you recover and how that recovery happens and how everything else in your life self-energizes back to affect all the other things. And each new moment after that, you get further away from the linearization that you do with the MRI or whatever the imaging is.
Yeah. And I think there are more and more studies too, at least looking at low back injuries, because that's where a lot of the imaging studies are done. And I really like to look at if there's anything distally with this, but what a lot of evidence is showing is that accuracy of a lot of these things is not what we would like to think it is. Now, for a lot of us who are iron sport athletes and want to be active, sometimes it's actually a good thing. It does leave us in a little state of confusion of like, okay, well, great, I'm glad nothing's wrong, but I hurt. What do I do? And I think that the way you articulated the non-linear system is such a great way. Like I'm taking that phrase and I'm going to start using that with a lot of my clients now. It's such a great way to be thinking about things, because you have no idea how many tracks are influencing. It's like the game of Mousetrap, where the balls rolling around. You don't know exactly what's going to be happening next.
When he was talking about the body as a non-linear system, honestly, the thing I was thinking the whole time was, this is why it's so important to stay positive when you have an injury.
Yeah.
Is like so many of your habits, but also just your mental outlook seems to have a big effect on the healing process. I don't know what the chemical pathways going on here, but we know that chronic stress is bad for just about anything. So at the very least, you could keep your stress low and hope that will accelerate the healing. But what other downstream effects are there with that? Like, you'll have better habits in so many ways. It'll affect the posture and the way you move, and how that'll affect the healing of an orthopedic injury.
I think the mindset stuff is super interesting. I had a call with a guy yesterday who he tore his PCL. It's like totally non-existent. He was a bull riding, he was in a bull ride. He actually was in a bull riding accident. That's the kind of thing that, like, usually if I'm in a clinic and someone's like, oh, like I hurt my knee, I'm like, how'd you do that? A bull riding accident? A hard, lame joke. Laugh with me kind of thing.
Well, you're in Texas now, so.
That's true. This guy actually was in a bull riding accident, but he's also the person who's like the most positive person I have ever met in my life. Like, his favorite thing is he'll go into a situation that just looks like it sucks. And he'll basically come in and be like, how can we optimize this? And I'm like, what a hopeful, positive way to go about things. And so he's had some really crazy stuff go on, and yet he's still sitting here looking to break some national records in powerlifting next year. And
I wish you could quantify that, because everyone knows chronically upbeat people and also knows how many good things tend to happen to them. And it's it's remarkable how, because it doesn't take much, nonlinear system. You have a point of inflection, and one person takes a negative view on it, no matter how minor it is. The next person takes a positive view on it, and you bifurcate very slightly there. But because nonlinear things self-energize, that small little track there at that little nondescript tiny thing that you take a positive outlook, then now is able to affect every possible thing that happens in your life, versus the other one doing the same thing, but they're going in two different directions. It's remember when Oprah was doing that thing, The Secret, or you got whatever you think. It's or even karma, it's no, they're not real things. What they are is that, if you are kind to people, you're more likely, because you only know 1,000 people at most your whole life. So if you're kind to everyone, there's a lot of people that you're going to have multiple interactions with that know you as a kind person. And, that's going to, call karma or whatever you want. That's going to affect how they interact with you. And it's the same thing with a positive upbeat or thinking about things. If you take the negative view of everything, it doesn't take very long. You have this minor little thing, and person A takes a negative view, or person B takes a positive view. They're almost the same path, but then the next little thing that pops up, that guy takes the negative view again, and this guy takes a positive. There's a lot of things that happen in our daily life. You do the negative view of everything versus positive view of everything. And they're not going to be unidirectional, but eventually that positive guy gets so far in the positive that he's, good things just always happen to him.
Mm-hmm. Now it's really wild to think about. Also really cool, because it is something that we do have choice over and we do have control over. And not to tout. I do think that there is such a thing as toxic positivity. At least you don't lose an arm. Thanks, I think. But yeah.
Which is a sleep topic.
Didn't you lose an arm yet?
Yes.
That's the
Like
negative
the
thing.
post after in there, Justin.
It's the worst day of my life. It's
Really
the
leave
worst
it
day of your
alone.
life so far.
Dave's been sending these Instagram videos to me of a narrator basically.
Oh yeah, it's this like dude with an Indian accent narrating, and it's always set to like a nature scene or a dog playing or something. But it's something like it's like anti-inspiration. It's like, you know, some days are just bad days. You can't always make it better. Fuck it, try again tomorrow. All right.
We're getting close on time too.
Yeah, we'll just talk this one pretty quick. So somebody asked about sleep in the last YouTube video as well, and I think so the three of us, I think especially Justin, has kind of a view that's contrary to what you'll hear from a lot of people these days. So specifically when it comes to body composition and dieting and off-season success, what do you think about it?
I hate to get into this because it's counterintuitive, but I think sleep has very minimal impact on composition. And I'll say that if it had a major impact, there could be no sport of bodybuilding because no one sleeps in prep. No, I mean, no one does. And I'm not saying it doesn't have one because there's study after study showing, like obviously cortisol release is going to affect how you absorb nutrients, going to affect body composition. It's going to affect your ability to train, and obviously, physique and appearance is related to your training. But anecdotally, it seems that just about every really good bodybuilder is known for getting very little sleep or having weird sleep patterns, or even more than that, that you have a range of, you got people like Flex Wheeler used to claim to sleep like 14 to 16 hours a day versus Ronnie Coleman who claims to sleep like 5 hours a day, or Jay Cutler who sleep for a couple hours and go to the gym at 2 a.m. and then go back home and sleep a couple more hours. I think very clearly, and I think the misleading thing is when you read studies on it, they'll talk about hypertrophy and they'll do, biopsies, but the studies are all based around performance, like leg extensions to failure, in a sleep deprived state versus non-sleep deprived state. And yes, absolutely, sleep is important for performance. No one's going to argue that you are at your peak long-term performance on minimal sleep. However, I don't think most people would argue with the fact that you're probably just about every world record in the Olympics ever set was probably set on limited sleep, because if you're in the 100-meter final, you're not getting a great night's sleep. You're nervous as hell. No one sleeps well. I mean, maybe some psychopaths do, but most people don't sleep well the night before the most important performance day of their life. How many powerlifting records were made by someone who slept 3 hours the night before, And so I think it's not like it's not important at all. It's obviously important because performance of long-term eventually correlates to your appearance. But I think the sleep, I think it stems from the fact that brain growth in babies and things like that, and brain development is really correlated with sleep. And I think people consider babies are growing rapidly, and all their tissues in their body are growing rapidly, and their brain development is growing rapidly, and that's related to the large amount of sleep they get. Same thing with teenagers, that they think sleep is important for muscle growth. I just don't think it's as important as I would never say, go out and try to not sleep much. I'd say, yeah, you get good rest, get good sleep, get adequate sleep. But I think it's way down the rung of importance, at least as far as appearance, and so I hate saying that because now someone's going to see this and be like, Justin says you don't ever need to sleep, and obviously if you get a better night's sleep, you're going to perform better, and if you perform better in the gym long term, you're going to have better, you're going to grow better. But I don't think it has the importance, at least on appearance, that most people think at first glance.
I think that it's important to differentiate between prep and the off season too. Now, obviously, if someone has some sleep issues in the off season, I haven't looked enough into research. My understanding is that there are some pretty significant hormonal shifts, but I think a lot of people expect it during a prep, there's something wrong with them if they're not sleeping. And it's like, no, like the last 4 weeks or 6, or if you're me, 12 weeks of a prep, it's just kind of part of it. And the more you can embrace it instead of questioning it, you find other ways to make that time productive.
I feel like I think it has a negative impact in a more indirect way. Like I can totally buy that it doesn't have any direct negative impact on the mechanisms of hypertrophy and fat loss. But I know that it's just a lot of things start to decline if you go, weeks on end with poor sleep. Like training performance will be one thing, but I mean, you can keep that up for a while, especially if you're willing to use some stimulants. But just your mental outlook might change to the point where it gets just mentally more difficult to do all the things that you need to do as a bodybuilder and maintain all the other responsibilities. And to the point where, I'm guessing that that's one of the reasons why when some people get busy and then they just let bodybuilding fall by the wayside because they have other things to do, or why they choose to make reorganize their life to make it work. But I also feel like I could eat all the time, pretty much year round, until my sleep declines, and then that's like the one time that my appetite dips. So I can see that being a difficulty. And then other than that, I do feel like it has a decently big impact on water retention. If I go a couple of weeks with poor sleep, I will notice myself retaining more water, which if your main concern is the balance of muscle and fat, then that's not maybe a huge deal, but you get to a point where that does get unhealthy if you're already carrying quite a bit of water. But
I want to just because I'll get comments or people always take, like you say one thing and they take it all the way to the extreme. Kind of what I'm arguing is that if you take two people, person A sleeps, terrible sleep, like 4 to 5 hours a night for 6 months straight, just terrible sleep, but he never misses a workout. He's on point for every workout. He never misses a meal, never cheats on his diet. Everything's on point. And they both use the same anabolic cycle and they both have the same genetics. That person 2 sleeps 7 to 8 hours a night, amazing sleep, goes to bed at the same time, wakes up at the same time, but he misses 20% of his workouts and he eyeballs his meals. He doesn't really weigh them. And sometimes he goes out with his buddies and just eats pizza. Person A is going to progress faster,
sure.
Meaning that of all things related to bodybuilding progress, food, diet, supplements, anabolics, training, sleep is a part of that, but it's down the line as far as what's important.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not missing a training session for almost anything. So if I have to stay up until 1 a.m. to get something done, and then the workday starts at 9 a.m. the next day, I guess I'm training super early on a few hours of sleep. That's just what has to happen. Anything else?
Cool. Well, I think that probably about wraps us up for the night. Thanks again for listening. Guys, again, if you have any questions, drop in the comments below. We really try to snag some topics there. Also remind us if you're team nut butter, team guac, you can be a plebeian or you can be elite. One or the other.
I have an extra question. I put this on Instagram today too.
Oh,
it's about black eyed pea soup. Does anyone else do this on New Year's Day? It's a tradition. I've always done it. It blows my mind that 2 other people I've ever spoken to have heard of this.
No, but we used to have pork on New Year's Day, and I think it was a Polish thing because cows will just stay in the same field rutting around and not make any progress, and pork are always pigs are always moving forward or some stupid Polish thing. But we did that, but no, not the black eyed peas thing or black eyed pea soup.
Sounds like a good one too.
We ate frozen dinners on New Year's Day. I don't know what I'm not kidding. All right.
You know what's depressing? If you ever find out old holiday traditions, you realize how poor humans were just in general, how little wealth humans had. Where you see stockings. For one, that was your Christmas present. You don't have a tree with a bunch of presents. Now for kids, the stocking is that. Oh yeah, I think I almost forgot. Let me go get my new pens and erasers for school. But that was all you got. But even worse, they got fruit, or if they and that was oh my God, Christmas is here. We got to get an orange. Yeah, it's I just saw, the really made me think of this was I just saw a thing about a medieval castle or something, and they showed the wash basin. It's this big brick tub, and it was a little bit raised off the ground so they could put a fire underneath to heat the water, and that would kind of just work all the time, and the maids or whatever would wash clothes, except for Christmas when they would make the Christmas pudding in the wash basin. And there's old sayings that we still have linked to things like that. I can't remember what she said, but there's some saying we have, it might be more like a British saying where proofs in the pudding type thing or whatever, where it was basically a statement about how excited they were that they were going to get to eat pudding that one day a year, and they didn't have to have gruel and rotten meat or whatever.
Yeah, the history of all of these things definitely is.
Yeah, my grandmother put fruit in our stockings. It's probably because she grew up in the Depression.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or another thing, at the turn of the 20th century, like late 1800s, the average American lived on about $1 a day.
Yeah.
Not inflation adjusted, in like modern $1 a day, like which is so they lived, it was like basically $1 a week or whatever. But it's like remarkable, and that was just how people lived. And so like, like we all complain about America not being fair or how like crappy things are, and things could always be better. But like my grandparents' generation, they like you had a junky little home and maybe a family car, and you had like a radio, and you got fruit for Christmas. And like how far we've come, and we're so unappreciative. It was really what sucks. But anyways, we just started we just cleaned out the washing machine to start our Christmas pudding. So.
I was gonna say, I bet she's gonna make it smell amazing though. She's probably got some good spices in there and whatnot.
Yeah, well, it is. It's America at the turn of the 20th century, so spices are pretty much limited to some ginger root we pulled from the backyard and I don't know, cockroach wings.
I was talking to Tom and I we enjoy. I guess the three of us really like Target candles. It's like kind of our thing. So we're the fam, but anyway.
Oh, I don't want to get off topic even more. But I saw the hilarious, most hilarious Instagram. I can't remember the gist of it, but it was basically someone writing their will about to die in a car accident, and they were like, please at the site of the crash, prop up a 4th grade photo of me next to a cheap flower and a Target candle so that all may know that. It was like, oh my God, it's so terrible. But that's always what it is.
That's so terrible and so great at the same time. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for listening. Drop any questions below. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.
For more content like this, visit www.teamtroponin.com.
This video is brought to you by First Attachment Nutrition, battle-tested nutrition, expert formulated supplements. Join the First Attachment revolution.